Yeah, I'm really, really excited about today's topic. It's very common for a lot of people in community-focused roles to run events. I've personally had that experience of running events where like one person showed up and the facilitator cancelled and the ice is melted and you're running down to the bottle shop 2 minutes before it starts. Like there are so many moving parts in events and it can actually be really quite stressful. And then you've had like incredible experiences where you had sold out 150 person conferences and everyone just has a phenomenal time. So there's really this range of experiences and it really just is across the spectrum. And that's why we brought Em here. And so I'm really, really excited to introduce you to Em. And Em is the co-founder and head of community at XY Advisor, which is a highly engaged global professional network of financial advisors. So Em has organized and hosted, I'm pretty sure it's over 60 events, and has actually learned, what it actually really takes to make something memorable. How do you create connections with people? How do you make your events stand out when there are just so many events happening at the moment and people seem to register last minute? She was also recently a speaker at CMX Summit and flew over to San Francisco and was speaking about events and community on a panel there. And now she lives in Tweed Heads across the beautiful coast in New South Wales, but is currently in Sydney today. So Em, let's just dive straight in. Like, what role do events play in a community?
Such a good question. And just wanted to say hello to everybody. Like, it's so nice to see lots of faces and enthusiasm for creating events. And to answer your question, Paz, events, at least in my experience, they give so much depth to what actually happens in the online environment. So I've always said that your events, and whether they are online or offline, but it's a moment in time, a cordoned off space and time that you create to bring people together. For us, for XY, I've always said that our events are really the thing that bring the community to life, particularly with offline events, because that's where you get the energy exchange and the emotional connections and people being able to actually make new friendships. And when you see that happen in the offline environment and at your events, you tend to see that then transpire in the online environment. So whilst you can absolutely build relationships, make connections within the online community space, bolting events into that or making events a part of your strategy and what you offer your community just brings so much depth to those relationships. And often it generally leads to more engagement in the online space, which is really the North Star of most communities, right? You want to create a vibrant space that people want to come back to, where there's rich conversation, rich engagement, people helping each other, really, forging new relationships and connections, and ultimately being able to raise the bar in whatever it is you're all trying to work towards and whatever the collective goal is. So to me, they're super important. That doesn't take away from the fact that they can be super, super energy intensive to organize. But I think I said in the green room to Paz and Des earlier, I've never organized an event, no matter how hard an event has been to organize. I've never hosted the event and then afterwards thought to myself, I wish I never did that. Like, it's always been, I get the feels. It's so good. So that's my version of why they're important.
I love that. And yeah, it's like an experience that members can have together, and it's something that you can create either on your own with the community, with the team, or actually co-create it all together. And yeah, it really is that North Star engagement. And God, I feel like I've had an experience where I was like, I shouldn't have run that event. Like, I should have just not done that. So I'm very envious, and this is why we're learning from you today. And so yeah, I'm really curious, like there's been this evolution at XY Advisor. Like, I know that the events have been running for a while, and I'd love if you can talk us all through, like, what did the events used to look like, and then how did you pivot, and why did you evolve them?
Yeah, definitely. So first of all, I want to start by saying, before I started with XY Advisor, I had never organized an event in my life. So if there's any, you love people, you love relationship building, but you've never actually organized an event before, it's okay. The first thing I ever did with XY was I basically was given a document or an email actually, and they said, cool. So the first thing is organize this event in Sydney for 80 financial advisors. And I nearly had a heart attack because I thought, oh my God, I've never organized an event before. Like I'm so out of my depth. I have no idea what I'm doing. Thankfully, it came together. It required a bit of sort of guidance and communication with a few people, but I managed to pull it off. So I just want to start by saying, if events isn't your strength, if you've not organized an event before, don't be put off by that, or don't think that you can't do it. It's a skill that's learned and honed over time. And if you're in community, there's a good chance you've got high empathy and you're a people person. And if you have those skills, the rest is totally learnable. So just if you haven't organized an event before, don't be put off by it. So the evolution for our events in the very early days. So when I came into the mix with XY, there was maybe just a couple of hundred advisors in the community. Now we have 7,000 on our platform, in our network. In the early days, the focus was really on social connection. We wanted to really develop and forge those one-on-one relationships with people. And so our events involved an element of, I would say, education, but it was really casual. So there would typically be an MC and 2 or 3 people on the panel, and they typically were advisors or people that we knew within the industry. And that was the purpose, to bring people in. So they would come to the event to learn about a certain topic, just like we're doing here today. So that would draw them in, but the real goal of that event was for people to network and to meet and engage. Because if you just tell people, hey, we're doing a networking event, it may seem like there's not much of a purpose, or why would I bother? But if you give them a reason and a purpose and a pull, they'll turn up for that thing, but they'll stay for community or for networking. So for the first year or two, we really focused on that social element with a bit of education. A little later down the track, we evolved that to actually go around the country to 3 cities and then 3 more regional towns. And we did more of an educational tour. So we called it XY on Tour. And we had the same format. So it was basically a 3-hour event. First hour was networking, catching up, meeting new people. Then we had an hour of content. So we'd have an MC, 3 panelists, and those panelists were always advisors. So it was always people from our network, to really amplify that peer-to-peer learning, because that's one of the things that really stands out in our network. What advisors love more than anything is hearing from other advisors. So we basically took that concept and just amplified it by bringing everyone together offline to really dive into a specific topic. So then the last hour was just socializing, catching up, having a few beers, having a few wines, and just enjoying the night. And that's what I mentioned at the beginning. Those moments there is what really forged those connections and relationships which then would transpire in the online environment. Then COVID hit, and we, like everybody, had to completely pivot the way that we do things. So we took XY on Tour and we turned it into an online format. So we used the same concept, where we went to 6 locations over 3 weeks, so 2 at each location. And so this time around, we did 2 events per week, but in an online format. And it was really just focusing on the education and also giving people a chance to catch up in the chat box, very similar to what we're doing here. So we took that offline model and converted it into the online model. And one of the things that we've done always at XY is we're so honest, we're so transparent. So when we were organizing this event, we said to everybody, hey, we've never done we've never organized an online event like this before. We don't know if we don't know if it'll hit the mark, but we're going to try, because we need to create something, and we know you guys love our events. And so by being honest and transparent, we really bring people along for the journey, and they're so much more forgiving if something doesn't work. They're really appreciative of the fact that you've had a go and you've tried. So we switched and did some online events. And then most recently this year, we have now created what we call an all licensee PD day. So this is a full day education marathon, and it's really solving 2 key problems that we've uncovered that exist in our industry, and then creating an environment and an event that solves those problems. So for the last 2 events, we did one in June and one last week, actually. We had 1,500 advisors tuning in online for 10 hours. We live broadcasted for 10 hours. And people on average, every attendee on average tuned in for 7 or 7.5 hours. It was absolutely wild. And so that is now what we're starting to do based on what our community needs, which I'm sure Paz will probably get to at some point. But that's really been the evolution of our events.
Wow. So just clarify for a moment. Are you saying that you were live online for 10 hours straight and the average person was tuning in for 7 hours?
Yep.
Is that correct?
Correct. Yep.
Wow.
Yep.
And so I just want to unpack that a little bit more. Like, were you live streaming something from a physical location onto like a YouTube live stream and people could tune in? Can you just unpack like what that actually looked like?
Yeah. So in June was the first time that we ran this event, and we actually went into a studio warehouse. So we've gotten to that point in our evolution where we really wanted to upgrade and step up what we could deliver and the experience we could provide. So we actually brought in an events team that I coordinated with and worked with, and we hired a studio warehouse, and we live streamed, broadcasted online with a specific custom platform for the whole day. And all of our presenters just cycled through basically talking down the barrel of a camera. And what I learned from that experience is talking down the barrel of a camera for 45 minutes gives you no feedback loop. You have no idea what the audience is thinking. Are they resonating with it? Are they not? And so based off of that and off of some of the feedback we got from attendees, some people said, you know what, we would love to join this face-to-face. Like, we really, really appreciate face-to-face connection and getting together with other people. It'd be great to do this face-to-face. So for last week's event in November, we switched it up and we actually hired a venue in Sydney. We actually went to the Maritime Museum, hired a space, and did all of it live with an in-studio audience. So we had about 100 people in the room for most of the day who could sit there, enjoy, watch the presenters. The presenters, were able to have that energy exchange, get the laughs from the audience, have a good time, and that made their presentations even better. So last week we had about 100 people in the room and about 1,400 tuning in online from around Australia and globally.
Incredible. And like that example is a great case study for how you can evolve your events. Like, you ran something that was like a 10-hour live stream, and then you directly heard feedback from, the audience of like, hey, we'd actually love to do this in person. And then straight away you responded and reacted, and you were like, great, we're in Sydney at this location. And it turns out Gabby will be there with Ocean Impact Org next week as well, which is really cool. Gabby, you should share the link for the Ocean Impact event.
Yeah, definitely.
And I love that. And like, in terms of standing out, a lot of challenges we hear from community builders in our community is actually about like, how do we make our events stand out and actually ensure that people register and they actually turn up on time? Like, do you have any tips for us in terms of how do we create that event and craft it and communicate it to ensure that it really cuts through all the noise?
The first thing I would suggest is be really clear on the purpose. Why are you asking your community to take time out of their day to come to this event? It's that like classic what's in it for me. If you can be really clear on what it is they'll get out of it, that will make the whole process of promoting the event and getting people to actually turn up a lot easier. And one of the things, this is actually something I spoke about in Silicon Valley at CMX, was what we've done really well is we take the time to really, really understand what do our community need at a point in time. So like the evolution of our events, we've done purely offline, socializing face-to-face. We've done completely online, virtual. We've done education, like focusing on education. Like, the format of our events have adapted and changed a lot over the years. And sure, that requires us to pivot and change our processes. It's definitely not doable. Like, I was a team of one for about 3-4 years. So I know it can be done. It requires effort, but the ROI is so worth it, because when you really understand what your community need, and then you can create a memorable experience, if you sort of draw two circles, the Venn diagram in the middle is where the magic happens. Like, that is where people go, wow. And it makes them look twice. It encourages them to tell other people about it. So that's really like getting really clear on the purpose and what your community need, because what your community needed 12 or 18 months ago is probably not what they need today. and what they need today is probably not what they're going to need in 18 months. So just because you hosted an event a year or a year and a half ago and it went really well, to just stay in that rhythm and just keep organizing that same event, you may be doing yourself a disservice by not understanding, well, what are my community's needs today? So to give you one example, which I actually didn't mention in your previous question, at the end of 2020, I think it was 2020, just the year of chaos, we normally do an end of year Christmas party, and basically no one was hosting any events. I'm sure we can all cast our minds back to that horrendous year. And it was at a time when restrictions were starting to ease. And we knew no one else in our industry was doing any events. And we just had this feeling that we had to try and give our community members a chance to just catch up and, put their hand on someone's shoulder and say, how are you going? Like, how's your year been? And so what we actually created was a deconstructed Christmas party tour. So instead of hosting, what we would typically do is host one event and take it around to 6 locations in Australia. I actually organized 21 or 23 smaller COVID-safe parties at 14 locations around the country to all kick off simultaneously. And by some miracle, Melbourne had opened up for a period of time, and I was able to fly down to Melbourne and join one of the Melbourne parties that were happening in these small groups of 10 or 15 to celebrate getting through just a horrendous year. So, I've actually got a video where I explain how I organized that event. I don't think we have time to dive into it today, but if anyone's interested, I'm more than happy to send you that link to watch how I actually created that event, because that's a classic example of, we realized that our community didn't need education. They didn't need to learn something. They just needed to catch up with their peers, have a vent, have a rant, and go, shit, what a year. And so that is an example of meeting your people where they're at, delivering an event that matches their needs. And when you're really clear on that, the purpose becomes a lot easier, and then the promotion becomes easier, because people go, oh yeah, that makes so much sense. I want to go to that. So that's sort of one component there. And then in terms of actually people buying tickets and actually coming to the event, what's worked really well for us is setting really clear expectations. So you think about someone inviting you to a house party, and they're like, yeah, I'll meet you there. I'll see you there. And you turn up by yourself and you open the front door and you're like, oh my God, I don't know anybody. Where do I go? What do I do? You spend the first few minutes trying to figure out, okay, what's the social norms? Who should I talk to? And you're trying to make sense of everything. It's the same thing when your community are turning up to one of your events for the first time. Unless people are wildly extroverted, they're probably not going to just go and beeline for a group of people and introduce themselves and start chatting. They're going to turn up. They're going to take those first few minutes to try to figure out, okay, how do things work around here? What am I supposed to do? So if you can remove that sort of cognitive dissonance before they even get there, you'll remove anything unexpected, any surprises, any confusion, and they'll turn up feeling already comfortable. So one thing that I would do is, in the lead up to the event, maybe a few days or a week before, I would actually send out a bulk email, and I would send a video. And you don't have to record 20, 30, 50 videos. You can just do one. Use something like Loom, or there's a tool called Bonjoro, and you just record one video. And I would say, hey guys, and I'd introduce myself in case people didn't know who I was, so that when they turn up, it's like they know somebody. It's like, oh, hi, Emily. Yeah, I saw your video. I'd say, and I would just give them details. We're turning up at this event. It starts at this time. We'll have an hour of networking, an hour of content, and it just takes away any confusion, so that when they turn up, they're already relaxed. And when someone's already relaxed, they're going to be far more inclined to, oh, hey, yeah, nice to meet you. I'm Emily, and great. How long have you been here for? And then it just naturally creates that flow for connection and deepening those relationships. So in terms of standing out, there's a few things there. I'm sure we can unpack anything.
100%. And I think the overall kind of theme here is when everyone is zigging, how can you zag? What can you do to stand out, to be a little bit different, but also listening to what people need? And I think that communication in the lead up to an event is really important. And some things I've noticed that people have done with events, if you read something, even just the description, when it's very vague, there's no photos, you're like, what is this? Like, what? Like, I think, but if you trust that person, you know the host, you're like, yeah, I know it'll be good. But if you don't, like, it's actually really great to explain like the agenda, the flow. Like, I love having photos of all of like key hosts so people can recognize them, and I have photos of the venue space, even the building outdoors, so they know like, oh, that's what I'm looking for. Like, it's just all these little touch points along the way. And speaking of touch points and actually building connections, Em, like, a lot of the events that people run are about connection. We want people to connect with new people. We want them to meet mentors and advisors and other founders or other like-minded people. What tactics can we use to ensure that we are actually creating valuable connections between people when organizing events?
I think the best way to answer this is to just share some examples of what's worked for us. Now, I don't know the size of the communities everyone in this call is building, so I'll just share some examples at the various stages so that we kind of hit, like, if you're just in the beginning of building a community and it's kind of, you're nurturing a nice small group of people, or if it's more sort of medium, bigger size, or if you're looking to scale, like, I'll try and hit an example so that we can all get some value out of these. But one of my favorite examples, and to be honest, you can do this at any sized event, is when people arrive, like the onboarding, the welcome into the event. And I wish I could claim this as just this super creative idea, but it actually was born out of something that didn't work. So the very first event that I organized that I mentioned earlier, I thought I'd be really diligent, really organized. I'd get everyone's names printed off nicely so that's in a nice little name tag. And when people arrived, it took me forever I was trying to like search for names, and it just was such a disjointed sort of experience. And then for people that bought a ticket last minute, I didn't have a name tag for them. I had to write one on Texter, and it just didn't work that well. And I thought there has to be a better way. And what I came up with was, I thought, okay, what if I reverse engineer this? So what I did was, and I did this for so many of our events, I'd actually do up a design in Canva that just said, hello, my name is, and then line. And then I would put some sort of little icebreaker question, like, the greatest movie of all time is blank, or the last holiday I went on was to blank. And so when people arrived, I was there to welcome everybody. I would tick off their name and I'd say, Paz, awesome. Just got this little name tag. I'd give you a Sharpie. Just fill out this little name tag. I'll pop it in a thing and, head on in, grab yourself a drink. We'll kick off the content soon. So you'd fill out this name tag, you'd put that on. And then no sooner you had walked into the room, someone would go, oh, what? You just got back from Antarctica? What? How was that? You've already started a conversation, because it's that kind of awkward dance when you first meet someone. It's like, oh, what do you ask? Like, what's like, oh, hi, my name's such and such. Where are you from? Like, it's something that just takes it that extra layer, and you start to create those emotional connections with people when you can relate to something. Or even if you can't relate to something, there's that curiosity of like, tell me more about that. And storytelling is so powerful for creating those emotional connections with people. So not only was it handy to facilitate natural icebreakers and networking without someone having to be there to introduce people, but it also was more efficient. People were filling out their own name tags. It was totally consistent. I didn't have to do it for them. There was no searching for names. I just had 4 or 5 Sharpies, piles of name tags. They'd fill them in and off they go. So that was such a great idea. So please feel free to steal and use it. It was so valuable. Another thing was for our online events. So when we pivoted in COVID and hosted all of our our event tour online, my question was, how do we replicate the connections that happen naturally in the offline space when people are together, sharing, having a drink together? How do I bring that to the online environment? So we have our own platform for all of our conversations and discussions and where the community exists online. So for those that registered to join we called it the work from home tour, I actually created a specific group for them on the platform. So when they bought their ticket, they received an invitation link to join that space. So in the lead event, I was really championing a lot of chatter and a lot of conversation in there, really pumping people up, and then they were commenting. So they got to see the names of other people who were also going to be joining the event. So when we actually hosted the event, I made sure that I kept reminding people, like I was always encouraging them to jump into the chat and share ideas and communicate. So people sort of naturally felt more comfortable. And then the other example that I'll share came from the Deconstructed Christmas Party Tour. Now, this was a very unique event. It took quite a bit to organize, but the payoff was so worth it. But one of the things I did, and I share this because I just want to kind of inspire or just kind of share some examples that motivate people to think outside the box, like to get creative. Don't just do the same things because that's the way it's always been done. So one of the things, so we had 350 people at 23 different parties all happening at the same time. And my question was, how do I bring that community spirit when we have people literally everywhere? Like we had 3 parties happening in Sydney at various venues to be COVID safe. And so what I did was I created a specific group on our platform, invited everybody in. And for those that were going to be at smaller parties, again, it was that concept of when you're turning up to something so intimate, if you don't know people already, like how could I try and make that experience a little more comfortable for everybody? So what we did was as we let people know of the venues that they were going to be at for their parties, we actually did up graphics that had everyone's photos of which party they would be attending. And then I did group introductions in that group. So I'd be like, hey, here's the Sunny Coast crew. Here's who's going to be at the Sunny Coast party. And then I would tag everybody. So they got to meet the other people who were going to be at their party before they actually turned up. So it just meant that when they showed up to this party of 15, it was like, oh, Paz, hey, Abby, oh, yeah, I saw your photo. Yeah, so nice to meet you. Just took out the sting of doing the whole, hi, oh, my name's Emily. Where are you from? So that also worked really well. So yeah, I don't know. There's a few examples there. I hope that's been a bit insightful or helpful to people. Feel free to put something in the chat and let me know. That always helps.
Spot on. I can tell you right now, I mean, those examples are very concrete, and straight away you can think like, oh yeah, I could use that at this and I could do it at that. And like, even to build on that, like 2 examples I've seen, like I'm attending a full day workshop in 2 weeks, and I have been assigned a buddy, and I've been welcomed by a buddy who's also going. And then I have a buddy, so I need to welcome someone else. And now it's my turn to actually introduce both of these 2 people together before the workshop. And so straight away, like I've met the founder of Inventium, and I've met someone who helps works at Alcohol Anonymous, and it's amazing because I already am like, oh, cool. There's like 2 people I know at this workshop, and there's already a connection and like that level of comfortability, and you feel like you kind of need to show up for your buddy. Mm-hmm. So a lot of it, can be really creative. And then there are, of course, like very amazing platforms and tech tools that really help. And one of them is Brella, that I know a few people who went to Sunrise used a lot for big conferences in person. Brella helps make connections online with like a full member directory. But even just like following up after an event with like a guest list of like who was there, and like here are their like LinkedIn links, for example, if you want to connect. So there's a lot in there to unpack. And we probably have time for one more question from me, and then I'm going to open it up to the floor. So if anyone here has a question about events or XY Advisor and community, feel free to post it in the chat, or you can actually use the Q function and click on I have a question, and then we can pass you the mic and you can actually ask it live, which we would definitely encourage, because your question would sound way better from you than it would from me. So Em, I guess for the last question, I want to ask, like, in terms of the needs of the community, the needs are always changing, and obviously if we want to evolve our events, we need to be able to listen to our members. And this kind of builds on Cheryl's question of like, how do you know that your people wanted that? Like, how are you listening to members? So do you have any tips for us about how we can stay in tune and up to date with what's happening in the community so that we can make sure that we're evolving our events?
Yep. This is going to sound so simple, but so effective. and it's talking to your members. And I say that because we, in the world of community, like the community builder, the community manager, we have such a privileged position where we are literally at the forefront. We are the person building the relationships with all of the people that are in our community. And the more you build trust with them, and the more you build up that trust, the more you're in touch with everybody, the more forthcoming everybody is to tell you what they think and their suggestions. So I'm always reminding people in our community that I welcome feedback with open, honest arms. Like I welcome brutal feedback with open arms. And from saying that over and over, like every week, I think I would get an email or a message from someone saying, Em, I just had this idea. What if XY does this? What if XY does this? And I always tell people, amazing, it's going in the ideas bucket. I'll see if I never promise that I'll make those things happen, but I just am always reminding people that there's this open channel to tell me what you want, because the whole reason we're creating this community, the whole reason we do what we do is to add value to the advisors and the people that are in there. So please don't be shy, let me know. And I'm also not shy to reach out and ask. So I will touch base with advisors. And in the last 18 months, I've actually been doing hour-long one-on-one interviews with individual advisors every week. It is amazing what you can uncover. And I highly encourage, if you've got capacity, and it doesn't have to be an hour, it could be 30 minutes. But the way I invite that invitation is I'll reach out to an advisor and I say, hey, I'm hosting some conversations with advisors in the network over the next few weeks. Really would love your input to help us shape the next iteration and the direction that we take this platform and this network. Because people then really feel like, oh, you want my input? Like, oh, wow, like they are contributing to the process. And 9 times out of 10, like the only times people have said no is when they don't have capacity. Oh, I'm really flat out. Can we do it in a few weeks? So I would encourage you to don't be shy, like reach out to people, because if they understand that the reason you're wanting to reach out and connect and ask these questions is to create a better experience for them, it's a no-brainer. And in the last, definitely in the last sort of 12 to 18 months, one of the things we do is we analyze all of the conversational data that happens on our platform. So I know this won't be possible for all communities, but we have thousands of conversations that take place on our platform every year. And so we actually take the data and we're able to analyze those conversations and actually pick out the themes. So that is how we uncovered for our All Licensee PD Day. We kept seeing these conversations and comments from advisors saying how much of a struggle it was to find efficient CPD and actually get their professional development quota done efficiently. And they were also saying that the content that exists out there is not actually relevant to what they're trying to solve in their business. And so that kind of pricked our ears up and we said, okay, how can we solve that problem? And so we thought, what if we did a full day PD marathon? Like, what if we tried that? And what if we made sure that the agenda wasn't just us pulling presenters to build an agenda and expecting the advisors to fit into that? What if we actually boiled down a list of, well, these are the problems we know advisors are trying to solve, and then go and find the industry thinkers and the thought leaders who can talk to those topics and give a 45, 50-minute presentation to solve those problems? Like, what if we tried that? And so when we built this event, same thing, we told everybody, hey, we're creating this because we've listened and we know that these are prominent problems. We're just going to give this a go. If it works, we'll do it again. If it doesn't, that's okay. We'll pivot and adapt. And people really latched onto it. So that's, between looking at the conversational data, doing the interviews, and just reaching out, throwing a random question here or there. Hey, what do you think of this? Hey, what do you think of that? What would you love to see? Just collecting all of that in a big, metaphorical bucket. And then just look for any patterns and themes and think, oh, okay. And don't be afraid to try something new. People will be far more forgiving for you trying something new to add value than to do something that's not resonating, or even worse, to do nothing. So that would be my advice.
It's so awesome to hear, how you've approached a lot of different situations, but I think it's so true. Like, listening to our members is what we're here to do. We are the decision makers, but it's so much easier to make decisions when there's a majority vote or people want this. So it's like our job to listen and respond and deliver. And like another great way is like always asking for feedback at the end of every event, just messaging people, even if they don't submit the form, you just say, hey, how did that go for you? Is there anything we should try next time? And actually asking to co-create events with your members. That's such a good one. Just before we do wrap up, is there any final words, any kind of quick last nuggets of knowledge before we wrap?
I think I've covered most of it. I would just say, events require a lot of effort. I will not sugarcoat that. It requires effort to create the events, but the ROI, like the value, what comes from events, seeing people have a great experience, and then them telling other people about it, like it really makes it worth it. And if there was one thing I would leave everybody with, it would just be to don't hold back the fear of getting it wrong. We're all trying to figure this out. We are all trying to figure it out. No one has all of the answers. And particularly with communities are like fingerprints. Like no two are the same. What works for our community may not work for your community. And just this process of iteration and adapting and not being afraid to try something new, that's the one thing I would leave you with. Like, yeah, your community will really appreciate the effort of trying things to further support them in whatever the collective goal is that they're working towards.
Absolutely beautiful. Thank you so much, Em. On behalf of everyone here, I just want to say how grateful we are for you sharing your absolute incredible knowledge and experiences. And I'm sure everyone will add some reactions now so you can feel the love. So just on behalf of everyone, just a huge round of applause for Em. Thank you so much, Em. Enjoy the rest of your time in Sydney. And thank you to all of our fabulous CCians still on the call. Just a special shout out for Des. Can we just give Des an incredible emoji reaction? Because you just absolutely smashed that intro and check-in. So thank you for setting the scene, Des. And thank you for everyone for being here. CCians, you are my people. We are here together for each other.